what I'll do is, I'll just go through briefly like whatever we had discussed in the last class. We had just gone through all the different graphs, the major graphs and charts that is available with Tableau. There are a whole lot of options that Tableau gives. It's around like a 23 charts natively it gives you, and there are a whole bunch of others that you can build using some calculated fields and different kinds of like scripting within Tableau. So these are the major types that are available. Major types that are available. So we can, first one is, as we see here, the text table. So I'll just go through the slides, which describe what each of these is. And one more thing is that in this table here, if you notice, it also tells you like how to create these charts. So like we can use something, the tool called show me and create the chart, or else if you want to create by dragging and dropping fields onto the view, then you can do it as well. Here it just explains you in the case of doing that way, that is by dragging and dropping. If you drag a dimension first, then it produces a text table or a crosstab. And if you drag a measure first and then a dimension, it produces a bar chart. So it's just given all the details here, like what if you drag which one, what kind of chart will be drawn. Okay, so the basic type was the first basic type was the text table. This is like a cross table or pivot table kind of a thing. Which is, if this is probably most basic kind of a report that you would have to create in Tableau. It's generally Tableau is essentially a visualization tool. So the way the workflows would be in a Tableau dashboard or a Tableau solution, it would be like you have the summary information in the beginning. So that would be the first dashboard which you would actually develop, which has got all the summary information aggregated at some levels, some dimension, and then you can drill down into the details. So generally the text table would come at the last level, wherein you drill down, and then finally you want to see, for a set of data, you want to see the details. For example, this order, I want to see. Finally, you drill down into some categories and then some region, and then finally you want to see the details of a set of orders. That's when you actually go into the details and show the text table. And again, in Tableau, like it allows us to create subtotals and totals, and you can actually color code it by different categories and different dimensions. That is available in Tableau. And then we move on to the bar chart. This is again the second, probably. This would be probably the most used and a very simple and a basic chart type, which actually gives a lot of insights into your data. So this is a bar chart. There is a dimension that you drag onto the view, and then a measure, and then it will create a bar chart for you. And then you can flip it around, like a row and column, and then you can swap those and all those things you could do. And then the second, like most important or the most used would be the trend lines, the continuous line charts. So basically these line charts give us a view of data when you want to see a trend, basically, so like how's my sales happening over the past few years or a few months, a few quarters or weeks. That's when you actually go for a trend line graph, basically. And then you have either you can go for a plain line or you can go for a color coded. So this is nothing but to drag a customer segment into the color palette. It will draw it to split those lines into. Okay, and then you have this. We spoke about the individual axis and the blended axis. So individual axis is when you put the measures next to each other over here on a row or a column, and it will create an individual axis for each of these. So you see a different axis for sum and different axis for profit. And whereas if you go for a blended axis, it is something like you have a single axis, you have a single graph. Within a single graph chart, it will plot both the measures. So one major thing for important thing for this is both the measures should have the same units. So over here, sales and profit, they have the same unit, which is like dollar. Some unit of measure is like $1. So both are dollar values, so that those could be plotted together. If one is a dollar and another is a time or something else, it wouldn't really go well. And again, staying with this is like what we saw here is a blended axis, where you have, it's actually a single axis and you have both the dimensions, both the measures. I'm sorry. There is the other chart called dual axis, which is if you see here, actually it has created two separate axes for each of, one each for the measures. And then staying with the dual axis, you can change one of that into a bar, and then keep the other as a line chart. So that's called the combination chart. So all those things are done here, in the marks. So you can actually select the measure that you want to change the chart type, and then select that particular one, and then change it to whatever type you want to change. Okay, and then you have this scatter plots, and scatter plots are very important when you are trying to plot two measures. It's something like you have profit and sales over here in the example. So this gives you a very clear picture of like how much my sales has been and how much the profit is. So it's when you want to plot this. So you want to see like I've done a good amount of sales over here, but then how's my profit? In this example here, it's very good. The sales and the profit is very good. But if you look at this one, probably you're spending 50K on your sales. You sold 50K, worth 50K, but then your profit is actually negative here. So that sort of a view representation it gives you. Again, you can have it as a simple scatter plot, or then if you want to put the color coded with different segments, you can do that. Different dimensions. It could be any dimension. And then this is the pie chart. This is again when you want to show some proportions. That's when you choose the pie chart. It's a simple chart, but then there are certain pie charts not always be the ideal charts to go with. So some examples are like, one thing is very simply put. If you have more than 3 or 4 or 5 categories or 4 or 5 members in a dimension that you want to plot, then a pie chart wouldn't really be the right choice, because you will have a lot of small slices coming in, and you'll not be able to really understand like which is, and sometimes you'll not be able to understand which is smaller than the other and things like that. So this is an example where a bar chart actually fits better, does a better job than the pie chart. And then we spoke about the maps. Tableau gives us a very good interface for plotting your sales or profit or anything on a field map, on a geographical map. Okay, so this is something like you put the maps and you put the pie chart on the map. So this is an ideal situation where you could use the pie charts when you have a small number of members in a dimension and you want to split the sales by that or a profit by that. This would be a nice choice, so that in California, you can just decide upon the size of the whole of the pie by sales. Over here, if you see, the size is by the sales and the angle is by the profit. So if you see this guy here, the regular air is the most profitable person, most profitable ship mode in California. So that all this insights could be drawn here using pies. And then we have something like heat maps. Heat maps give a high level information about the color coding, saying that this is dark green is doing good and the dark red is not doing all that good, kind of insight. That's when we go for heat maps. And then you have something called tree map, which is a new feature in Tableau 8. So this is again similar to, this also is based on the proportions, but instead of angles, you have rectangles or squares drawn within a big rectangle here, which based on the proportion of whichever measure you want to carry out. So like here, it is the size of each of that is based on sales, and the coloring is based on the profit. So that way, it will give you some insights on what is the size and the color. And then the next one is we spoke about the page shelf, which is actually a nice feature in Tableau, which allows us to. I think this is best illustrated with an example. I'll just show just a small one. I already have that created, so I can just run it. This is basically on a time dimension, so if you want to show actually plot the graph as if it is really happening live, so that kind of a picture it can paint, so like something like if I want to start from February 2009 and see how my sales has been over the weeks, so I can just make it, it can animate and then it can show you how it is moving and how it's been moving and things like that. So this is one cool feature which Tableau gives you. This could be helpful when you're doing a presentation and you want to show the trend with some animation as to how it's been going. So this would, like, you have to, if you want to keep the history, then you have to just say show history and then say select all in this section here. These are the things that we had spoken about last class. So I'll just start with the topic for today, which is like hierarchies. Hierarchies are very important in whatever like reporting that we would be doing. In this example that is shown here, you have product. We have product, a category, and then we have a product subcategory, and then we have a product name. So generally what we would like to do is, we would like to group them into something called hierarchy, which will tell what product comes under what subcategory and under what category does that subcategory come under. So that kind of relationship is what is called hierarchy. So this is generally built in a general like a data warehouse or a business, BI database that you are building. So you generally build those hierarchies inside the database. And if you have a multidimensional OLAP that you are connecting to, then these hierarchies would already be set in the database. But then it's not necessary that it needs to be set in the database itself. So if sometimes you are just connecting to a relational database, or even how we are doing, we're connecting to an Excel data. So even here it wouldn't be built in the data set. So you can actually go ahead and build that hierarchy. So how do you build the hierarchy is, it's simple. You just select these dimensions in the data window. So I want to create a hierarchy called product hierarchy, and I want to use these 3 dimensions and I want to take these 3 dimensions and put them into a hierarchy. So I'll just go here, select that, and right click and say create hierarchy. And then it's showing me what all dimensions I've got selected. So I'll just go and rename that as a product hierarchy. So now you see here, you see there is something called product hierarchy, and then there's a plus mark next to it, and this icon here, which is like a data flow kind of a thing, that tells us that it's a hierarchy. So when you expand this, then you would see that under product hierarchy, you have the product category, the name, and the subcategory. Now this is not correct actually. I would like it to be like product category, and then the subcategory, and then the name. So we can just drag this over to here, and then you have the hierarchy set up over here. So it's pretty simple to set these hierarchies up in Tableau. Now if I want to check or see my sales or profit based on this, I can just drag this product hierarchy here. So if you see there's something called product category that has come up. The product hierarchy doesn't get moved onto the shelf or copied onto the shelf, but is the product category, which is the highest level of the hierarchy that gets shown over here. It's a product category pill that comes up on the row shelf. Okay, and now let me just drag the profit here so that I have a view of a bar chart of the profit for the product category. So if I want to now see the drill down into the subcategory, I can just do this. I can just do this, and it will tell me. It'll drill down into the product subcategory, and then if you want to finally get into the product itself, just expand that, and it will take you to products. So in this, if you once you expanded and you don't want to put this, you don't want the product category, and you just want to do it on the subcategory, you can just remove this from here, and you will have a hierarchy here, which is a temporary hierarchy. On the shelf now it says just product subcategory and the product name. So these are hierarchies, and these are very important because generally all our reporting would be aggregated at some levels, under some dimension, under some hierarchies. So whenever we are reporting, we are either report at a start at a category level, and then drill down into a subcat level, and then go to the product level, and then get into the details, each order which we could use where we could use the text table to show all the details of that order. So that is why these hierarchies are very important, and those could be easily built in Tableau and used for our reporting and visualization. So these slides speak about the same thing, how you can create and how you can move these things around. And then if you don't like something, you can just move this up and then set the hierarchy right. The other thing is you can also add, if you feel that there's something else that needs to go into this hierarchy, you can just drag that and put that here, what I just did now, might not be the right thing, because I don't think, under the product hierarchy you would get a product container. But then if there is something that makes sense, we can actually go ahead and add those things, add those dimensions into the hierarchy. And if you want to remove one of them, you can either drag them out or then just say remove from hierarchy and it gets removed. Okay, and we've seen how to create filters. There were various ways of creating filters. Okay, and what I was talking about is something called context filters. So this is something we have seen very different ways of creating filters. So one was like by dragging a dimension or a measure onto the filter shelf, or right clicking it and then saying show filter, and all those things. So and what you might have noticed is that when you create that filter, it's like an independent filter. So it acts on its own. So even if you create multiple different, if you want to filter it on different either product category or and then on a order priority, you could do that, but then each of that would work independently. So there are some situations where you don't want them to work independently, but then you want them to work on a context. So when we say on a context, it's something like you create one filter, which is the context filter, and then create all the other filters. Apply all the other filters in your dashboard or in your report upon the data set that is coming out of the context filter. Okay, so I'll just give an example here. I'll again have the sales for product category. And then I'll have each of those filters here. Select all and product name. Then I'm going to say show quick filter for each of these. So now if you see here, all these three are independent of each other. So if the how we you could say so if I select furniture, what gets applied is basically it acts independently. The data is first fetched and then each of this gets applied on it. But if you want to put it into a context, we can easily make this product category as a context and then change these things to only relevant values here. So whenever you create a filter, it gives you these values, which says give me all values in the database for that particular field. So in this example, it is a product subcategory, and in this example, this one is the product name. So if I say show me all the values in database, it will get that irrespective of what is being applied. But we would say show only relevant values. So once I say only relevant values, you can say that I'll just remove this now and just put a furniture. Then you would only see the furniture ones coming up. Or office supplies, only office supply coming up, and then technology. So it gets cascaded. The filter gets cascaded because first this filter is applied, and on that filter, this on the data on that data, this data would be applied. There is another example I can show, which is probably going to make it even more clear.
What is the meaning of cascading?
Okay, by cascading filters we mean one dependent on the other. So generally it works independently. So it is something like if you have filter and then I say show all filters, show all values, I'll take it out from the context. I say generally if it is like show all values in database and things like this. So it will you see it always remains irrespective of what I'm selecting here. The product category subcategory filter is not dependent on the product category. Okay, so if I change it, either I can put it into a context, or then I can go and say only relevant values. So when I say only relevant values, even now you can see that if I deselect this, you would see only the technology, only the product subcategories that come under technology, and only the product names that come under these subcategories. So this is a form of cascading filters. You could set it up like this, and then also to speed it up, you could actually put it into a context, which is actually when you're working on a large data set, that is when we use this for performance improvement. We have this context filter set up on product category. What happens is when this report is getting loaded for the first time, it applies this filter on that, on the data. Okay, so the data itself will get filtered on these product categories, and then I can actually then go ahead and then automatically it would be a show only relevant values, and then it will work like a cascading filter, which means like I select a product category and the subcategories would reflect what product category I've selected, and then if I select subcategory, the product names under that would reflect whatever category and subcategory I've selected here in the filter. Okay. So I'll just show another example. So I have here, I'll put sales here. Okay, so I have here the sales basically. So I have the sales and the product name. So this view actually gives me the sales for each of this product that is available for us in the database, irrespective of which product category or subcategory that it belongs to. So now I might want to filter this, and I might want to see a top 10. Okay, so there's a simple thing, and I just go here, I go to the condition, or I'm sorry, like I go to the top tab here, the one that says top, go there, and then I select this top 10 by sales, and I say okay. So it shows me the top 10 by sales. Now there's a filter that gets automatically applied on the product name, and this filter is nothing but just the one that we selected right now. Okay, so that's good applied, and then you see that the sum of we have the sales, top 10 sales for product name shown in the view. And now I might want to look at top 10 sales under a particular subcategory, okay, or a category. Let me say category. So now what I will do, I would drag this and put this into category. Okay, now I want to see the top 10 of furniture. Okay, so if I drag that product category onto the filter shelf and then select just furniture, see what happens. It just gives me 3. You know why it gives me 3? Because it first calculates the top 10, okay, and then it applies this product category filter, which says give me only furniture. So what it's actually doing is it's calculating a top 10 and then applying this filter for furniture, and then it's giving me only 3, whereas I'm expecting top 10 to come out, top 10 under furniture category to be shown. So this is where actually we can go for. I'll just clear this filter. I'll just add this filter again. I can keep all, okay, and then I will say add to context. I will select the furniture, as I did earlier. Okay, and I'll go here and I say add to context. So now you see what's happening is this context filter gets applied first on the data set, and then the top 10 gets applied. So this allows me to create a product category wise top 10 very easily. So this context filter actually changes the way the filters get applied, so it's like one after the other. So in a view, you can have one of them as a context filter. So based on whichever is your major filter on that sheet or on that report, create that as a context filter, and then apply all your other filters on top of that. So what it would be doing is applying the real major filter first, and then it would apply the remaining on the data set that comes out after applying the major filter. So that way we'll be able to achieve this. So now if you see, all these products are from product category furniture, and then you see the top 10 also. So this is very important. So there are a couple of reasons why you would want to do this. So basically one is to improve the performance. So as I earlier mentioned, so if you have a lot of filters or have large data set, what happens is the queries would be slow. So you remember I was telling that if you use a filter, a show filter, what it actually does is it goes back into the database and fetches all the distinct members for that field. Whichever you are setting as a filter, it actually goes back and gets all the distinct members, and then it populates the quick filter for us. So when you have, for example, like we would have some dashboards, which would similar to this. We would have a department and then a category, and then a subcategory, and then something else, and the time dimension. So there would be lots of filters on the report to be applied. And when we are working with this is anyway we are working on an Excel, but then in the real time scenarios, you would be working with the databases, or ODS, which is operational data source, or data store, or on a data warehouse, where you would be dealing with millions of records. The report becomes really slow because it has to try so many times going back to and getting your data and displaying them in the filter and all those things. So that's when actually creating a context filter always helps. So once we create a context filter, we would say, okay, I want this report to be for the week 52, fiscal week 52, or something like that. We can create that time filter as a context filter, so that whatever data is fetched into the report is only for that week, and then the remaining filters get applied on that. So it's that way it is that much faster. So this is one of the ways that you can improve your performance of the dashboards and reports. Actually, what I would do is, towards probably in the later sessions, I would have a list of things that you can do. I'll show a list of things that you can do to improve the performance and things of that sort. Okay, and then there is something like the second reason is basically to create. It helps us to create a dependent numerical or top 10 filter, top 10 filter. So that's what we tried doing now, and then so I've just illustrated it here. So if you're creating just a top 10, it shows, and then you try to add a filter here, and then it shows only one, and then you actually make that as a add to context, and then it shows under that product subcategory what are all the top 10 product sales by sales. Okay, and staying with the different kind of filters, there you have something called calculation filters. See, calculation filters are pretty simple. They are just like any other filter, but then those filters would not be used. Okay, I'll just show you this. I have a product category now, sales, profit, and I have average discount. Okay, so this is another thing. For each of the measures, that you put onto the shelf, you have all these either you click on this inverted triangle here, or right click, and it will give you all these different options, So one of the options is what aggregation do you want to apply. So based on what data, what measure you have selected, and what is the data that is coming up, it gives you these options here. So you can actually go ahead and change it to one of them. And generally you might have noticed whenever I drag anything onto the shelf here, it always becomes sum, because sum is the default aggregation that is set. So you can change it to something else also. So the reason why an aggregation comes into picture is in Tableau, generally it is anything that you're trying to put on the shelf has to be an aggregate. So it could be any aggregate, it could be sum. Sum generally works when we are working with sales profits and things like that. But in some situations, you might want to change the aggregation so that it includes not just sum but probably an average. And I want to see the average discount that is given for appliances. So I want to see the average discount that is given on binders and binder accessories or something like that. So you see here, these are two different aggregations. One is the profit is sum. So it tells us, it adds up all the profit for appliance and then shows me here. And the discount is actually an average. So it doesn't add up all the discounts, but it just gives me an average of all the discounts provided for appliance orders and plots it here. Okay, so and when we say calculation filters, it is nothing but I have this view, but then I want to I want to change the view. I want to filter the view based on order priority. Okay, so I just say give me critical. So now what happens is, I have not used this order priority in the view, in the report, as a measure or dimension that gets displayed. But I am using that to filter my data. Okay, so even if I have not used it in the view, I am using it to filter my data. So this is basically called a calculation filter. So when we apply it on a relation, so there are two things, when we apply it on a relation database or a flat file like or an Excel, how we are applying, when we apply a calculation filter, it would keep the correct aggregation. But when we are working with multi-dimensional databases, it would always do a sum. That would be a default summation, would be the default aggregation that happens. But since we are working with Excel or any relational database, whatever aggregation that you define here would still be maintained when we use this filters. So now what you're seeing here is only the profit and the average discount for order type critical. So if you want to see here, and these are called tooltips. So here you can see this. So it shows me it's an average, and then profit is a sum. Discount is actually an average. Okay, and this is something which is of great help. This tooltip. There might be some things, something similar to this what we have done right now. So we are plotting the graph for profit and average and for each subcategory, but then I do not have the order priority on this in this view. So the user might actually be confused as to what order priority is looking at. So you can actually go ahead and do this here, order priority, and then insert that field here. Then you can do all your formatting. So now you see, so I've done it only for this mark. So okay, this is another thing that you would have to take note of. So whenever we are having multiple measures here, you will see multiple marks. Okay, so one would be all, and here it says multiple fields, and then you would see an individual marks card for each of the measure that we have. So one is for sum and one is for average. And what I just now did was adding the order priority in the tooltip of average discount. So you would see this tooltip updated only here because this is a graph for the discount. This is what I was telling, if a user wants to see what filter has been applied, so sometimes what we do is, you don't necessarily show a quick filter all the time, always, some scenarios by default apply a couple of filters and then you just have the view ready for them to see. So in that case, actually, we can either give it here. I mean, if we do not have enough space on the report itself to show a lot of information and a lot of these things, so we could put them into a tooltip. So this now, if you hover over the graph, it will automatically tell you, I mean, what is the order priority that you're looking at? What is the calculation filter that's applied on it? And there are different ways of formatting, so I will be going through all those things, the different ways of formatting and making your dashboard attractive and then intuitive and things like that. So tooltip actually forms an integral part of that, so providing good information and then formatting it in the right way, and then you can include a lot of color codings and then a lot of information you can provide it in the tooltip. And in the tooltip, if you see this tooltip, I have some command buttons here. But if you see this tooltip, that it's not there. That's because I have deselected this include command buttons. So if I include command buttons, or if I go here on this sum, you would see. So I can actually the user can actually go ahead and do a filter on that. So you can actually click on this keep only, and you would see only that, only this product subcategory, whichever on whichever this keep only was selected. Or you can actually go ahead and say no, I don't want to see the tables. So the table actually disappears here. So that's an option that it gives. But if you don't want it, you can just go ahead and turn it off here. So this is about the filters. Sometimes some of the features about filters or parameters would come in as and when we take new topics up, so which are related to that. So these were like when we have hierarchies, it is good to have context filters and then get into different these things like that. So you actually again there might be some another feature of filter that might come in later when we are going through the class. So I will take up at that point of time. So what I would like to talk about is actually the table calculations. So when we say table calculations, this is something like this would be an example wherein we have the data and we generally have the sum. So whenever we are trying to plot all the profit or any of those such graphs, or charts, we generally do it with the sum. So we would know what is the sum of profit, sales, and various things, trade investments and loss or whatever that is on sum as an aggregation. But sometimes what also you might want to see is basically what is the percentage of total and percentage of difference and what's the running total and all those things you would want to see. So for that, Tableau actually provides us with something called table calculation. So I'll just show this to you an example here. So you have product category and we have the sales here. Okay. Okay, so we have the product category and we have the sales, and if you see, the sales is nothing but a sum of sales of all the orders that is for office supplies, and then you have the sum of sales for furniture and then technology respectively. So in case you want to see there's one way of duplicating a measure or any field, so you can actually click on control and then left click and then drag it, so you get a duplicate field for that. So here I can go and there is something, this is a field where you can add the quick table calculation. So here I'll go ahead and then say percent of total. Okay. So what this, if you see, a triangle here, which a delta, which says, okay, this is a table calculation. So if you see here, what it's done is, I am seeing the technology, the sales over here, and then next to it, I'm seeing what is the percentage of total sales, and what percentage of contribution of sales is from technology towards the total sales of my organization. So if you add this up, it will be 100, and then if you add this up, it will be some value, and then you can actually try doing the totals. Yeah. So this you can see, so this is basically the total sales, and this is the different values of sales per category, and then this is actually the total 100% sales of that is for this much, this dollar value, and then this is the percentage split. So these are simple calculations, which you can use. I mean, you can just create these within Tableau. You don't have to really do have these things created in the view, or write SQL queries to create this in the database and then fetch these and all those things. So these are quick. These things you can quickly change these things in Tableau, and then you can have it ready for any of you. So generally, what happens is, I'll show you this. As and when I'm just doing something, these are like features that you could use. Like if you have a sheet here, you can actually go ahead and duplicate that, which would create a duplicate sheet, exact duplicate of that. Or else, if you want, I'll delete this. Or else, if you want, you can just go and right click and say duplicate as cross tab, which would actually create a text table for that, for whatever you have created. Okay, sorry. Don't need this. So I'll duplicate sheet, get rid of this, then I'll change this, I'll remove the go to show me and make it a percentage. Okay. A pie chart over here, makes a lot of sense because it is giving us a proportion of sales, and then it gives us a percentage of total. So it's a total of 100%, and then we split it into the percentage based on the sales. Total sales percentage. So this is one place where you could use a pie chart, and to represent. So we would generally do something like putting next to each other, a bar chart which gives us the numbers, the actual sales, and then next to it a pie chart which gives us the sales information. The percentage of total kind of information. That's about this quick table calculation. So similarly, there's lots of different calculations that can be done. So you can edit it, you can change it, and you can make it a difference. See here, it's a difference. So you would see, so there is nulls over here because it is trying to get the difference of this minus this. So there is nothing before technology, So that's why you would see a null over here, and then there is what it does is it does the difference. The sales of furniture minus the sales of technology is this value, and then the sales of office supply minus sales of furniture is this value, which is actually all negative because these things are lower than the other sales. So in the same way, you can actually create a lot of different things. Okay, I'll try creating another view and another illustration of. Okay. So I'm creating a duplicate sales here, and then I'm going to create a quick table calculation saying a running total. So now you would see that it's a running total which is just going up because it is just adding all the sales irrespective of what year it is, and it's just getting added up, and then it's showing me the running total. I can just put this into the same axis here and then show you the running total. So it says this is the actual sales. Get rid of this. So this is the actual sales, and this is the running total of the sales. So there are various different, there are different scenarios wherein you would need to plot different graphs and show it to your, because the management would be interested in seeing what is my running total of sales, so is it how good it is or something like that. So because it might be they might have a target for last like 3 years, for 3 years my total sales should have been $500,000 or whatever. So if you see the actual sales, the last year it might have really gone down, but then this year it would have picked up and made up for all the fall that it had last year. So we would still be on track with the target for 3 years. So that's when this kind of a graph would come handy, so that the user, the business user or the management can see, okay, we are on track, even though we've had a dip in our sales last year. Actually, this year's sales is more than made up for it, and we are on track, kind of a situation. So that's about the table calculation. So there are various different ways of actually creating these calculations. So this is like, we saw a couple of them, like the difference, and then we saw the running total, and then the percentage of total, percent from total thing. So we can actually have a lot of these calculations. And also, like, there is some advanced table calculations also, which probably would need some more time for us to actually go through that, to understand like how to achieve some of the calculations using table calculations. Actual table calculations, it even, we can even use, we can create some statistical calculations using these table calcs. Okay, so this is just an example. That's whatever I showed earlier. Okay. So what I've done here is I've created this bar chart wherein I am plotting the sum of sales, basically the sales for each customer segment under each region. So this is giving me what has been the total percentage sales split for each customer segment and each region. But if you see here, it's something like all the regions put together, it is considering it as 100% sale. That's a organizational sale, and then it is splitting each into like a 4.43. So 4.43 means for the central, in the central region, consumer segment contributed 4.46 to my sales. Okay, so it calculates it that way. So it's if we go here and we go to the compute using, so what it's done is, it is, you see, it is using this table down, which means it computes the entire table. Okay, so I can change the calculations by changing these options. So one, I can say instead, give me by pane. So when I say pane, this one here is a pane. So this region, so there are totally 4 panes in this. So like you have one whole table, and then the table is split into 4 regions, which are nothing but panes technically. Here, this thing. So I said, don't show me across. Don't show me the table down calculation. Show me the pane down calculation. So what that does is, it considers all the sales for a particular region as 100%, and then it splits the sales of each customer segment in that region with the, and gives me the proportion. Okay, so whatever was the sales for central region, it will, out of that, what is the percentage from consumer, what is the percentage from corporate, and all those things. So it shows the same way for each of these things. So these are very simple but yet very powerful and very important calculations. I mean, this gives so much of insights to our reports and the business users basically. So they want to see how it's split, which is the, so it's very simple now. So looking at this, it says, okay, and in central, this guy gives me this, like this is a percentage of sales that's happening, and that kind of insight. So you can actually create a lot of these things. I think I will not go through most of the things right now because it might be a little difficult to understand. There are lots of calculations that you could do here. I mean, you can go to edit table calculations and then change a lot of different things here, customize and write your own calculations and things like that. So I'll go through these a little later on in detail, probably in the coming classes. But this is the basic understanding of table calculations and how they are very useful, how they could be useful, and in what scenarios you could use them. So, as I said, just to recap, it's very simple to create a table calculation. You just come here, say quick table, and select what you want to do with it. See a moving average or any of these. And then if you want to change the compute using, just go say, don't compute using the whole table. Just calculate pane down or then pane across. I mean, we don't really have too many measures right here, so it will do it only by the pane down. Or you can also do it by cell. So you'll see what is the difference if you do it by cell. Each cell, irrespective of how much it is sold, is 100%. When you're calculating per cell would be like, this one would be one cell. So irrespective of how much it is sold, for that cell, it is 100%. So that's why you would get all 100% if you go by calculate per cell. So depending upon what kind of insights are required and what is the requirement and what does a business want to see. So based on that, you can actually use one of these different things. As I said, we don't have too many measures. We just have one measure. So across there is only one measure, so it will always be 100%. Use across. Okay. So this is about the table calculations.